my 5 biggest wildlife photography mistakes I made starting out. It's gonna hurt to share. Hey you guys, what's up? Hope you're having a good day, and today we're back with another episode talking about 5 beginner photography mistakes that you should stop making in your wildlife photography, and that I made in my wildlife photography a lot when I was first starting out, and sometimes still get caught in the bad habit of doing some of these things. Man, when I first started out doing wildlife photography, I made some bad mistakes, and today I just want to share some of those with you guys so that you guys can avoid some of the same mistakes that I made when I first started out doing wildlife photography. One of the challenges about wildlife photography is it's just such a tricky craft as compared to other photography types. You have such a short amount of time to accomplish so much of what you want. Typically with other types of photography, you have a lot more time to either set up something, or you have a lot more time to get more shots out of it, or you just have time to just simply process what's going on more. But in wildlife photography, so many things happen so quick that often you find yourself frantic about a lot of things. Which leads into the first wildlife photography mistake that a lot of beginners make that I want to talk about today, which is just running around, right? So a lot of times as a wildlife photographer, it's tempting. You see a bird and you want to run at it. You want to run over there and get the shots and get the shot, then you see another bird and it's really exciting, right? Oh my gosh, pushed it. You're running around and you're getting all these shots everywhere. Ah, shoot. Grizzly bear, no way. Ah, missed a shot. Guinea pig, yes. Ah. But at the end of the day, you're not really getting the shots you want. The shots aren't turning out nice, and largely it's because of 2 reasons. One being that often when you're running around and approaching things really quickly, whatever type of animal that is, typically they're going to be more scared of you, more timid of you, and you're not going to be getting the best setup angles on them as you do when you're more patient with them. Secondly, it's largely also due to because you're not getting set up yourself. You're not finding those good angles. You're kind of just taking whatever comes at you, right? And I know it's hard because when I first got into wildlife photography, I was super into birding and I wanted to see every bird I possibly could. I was super into birding, checking birds off my list, stuff like that. But in wildlife photography, to excel at it, you got to take a much different approach than in birding. Whereas in birding, you kind of get to, run around and you see things and you just check them off. But in wildlife photography, you don't get that shot. It doesn't really matter. Lesson number 1, definitely take your time. Don't run around so much. Don't be so frantic in your wildlife photography. Tying into point number 2, don't shoot everything. Shooting everything actually harms you in the long run. In your wildlife photography, if you're trying to shoot at everything that you see, first of all, a lot of those shots are not going to be worth it. It's not going to be quality shots, and you're going to spend a lot of time wasting time sorting through photos in the end, choosing which ones to edit and editing ones that really aren't that great. That's something that when I first started out doing wildlife photography, I had to learn a ton of. I just wanted to shoot everything. So, if I saw a new bird or a bird maybe I don't see too often, a lot of times I would just shoot it regardless of whether the shot was even worthwhile or not, regardless of if it was going to be a pretty shot or not. Even if there was an overexposed sky, a ton of gnarly branches in it with a lot of, discoloration or aberration in the back from the sky, I just shot everything. And so a lot of times what I had to learn was it's not worth taking most shots. Most shots are only good when you wind up really being prepared for them and knowing what you're doing. So if you're not taking a couple seconds to process the shot, figure out the best angles, you're really typically not going to be getting the best shots that you possibly can. A great example of this is a lot of times when I see a bird, my first instinct is no longer to shoot the bird, but rather to get into a spot where I can shoot the bird well. So finding a spot with maybe foreground that I can use to kind of increase or enhance that depth of field look for the viewer's eye. Or maybe I'm trying to spend time getting low to the ground, eye level with the bird. That way I get a nice, smooth, creamy field rather than, some choppy grass looking through the bottom of the frame. Setting up your shot and not just shooting everything that you see simply because you think it might be worth it is a lot of times the best route to take, and one of the biggest beginner wildlife photography mistakes that I've learned from. Really, at the end of the day, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but time equals money, right? And in wildlife photography, it's the same thing. The more time you spend getting bad shots, the less time you're spending getting a good shot. So if you kind of keep that mentality in mind as you're shooting wildlife, you'll typically find yourself getting better shots, more quality shots over time. Once again, coming back to that idea of time equals money, the third thing that I've learned from my beginner wildlife photography photography mistakes is to stop chimping so much. Now, what chimping is, for those of you who don't know, chimping is checking your shots after you take them. So for example, maybe you're taking a shot of a mallard or something like that, simple, and you're taking the shots and then you look down and you look at the screen before going back to taking more shots. And that's something sometimes I still catch myself in a really bad habit of. And let me tell you why that's so bad. What's so bad about that is often, I've had this happen quite a bit, more often than I care to actually admit, and I'm kind of embarrassed of in a way, but sometimes I'll wind up taking shots and have just these gorgeous angles on birds, and I'm taking a bunch of shots and then I look down to look at my camera and see if I like the shot, and then I look back up and there's an even better position that the bird's in, or maybe he's just starting to fly off at the moment, or maybe the animal's just starting to run at that moment, or whatever it may be. But now I've missed the shot because I wasn't there and I wasn't prepped for it, and I was too concerned with looking and reviewing the shot afterwards, when really I should have been concerned about still taking even better shots than there is. This is something that I'm working on still. I'm trying to improve to stop doing that so much, but sometimes I still catch myself doing that too often. And really the best time to check your photos is really after the bird's been gone for quite a while. Unless you're really questioning, hey, do I have the right settings? Like, is this shutter speed too low? Are these gonna turn out blurry? Or am I missing something here? Is the white balance off and for some reason you can't tell on the camera? Really try to stay locked on and focused on the subject, the animal that you're shooting, all the way until you feel like you've gotten either one, an amazing shot that you really can't beat, or two, the animal's already gone and you've already lost your frame and it's not gonna be a great shot where the animal is anymore. A lot of times I wind up shooting the same animal for about 10 minutes before I find that perfect shot that I really like. So taking just the first shots and kind of looking at those and questioning whether those are good enough or not, a lot of times I found it's just worth it to stick with it. Believe that you're gonna get better shots than you already have, and a lot of times you do wind up getting better shots a couple minutes into it. The fourth thing I want to talk about is a beginner wildlife photography mistake, and the one that I struggle with the most is putting in a subpar effort. So what do I mean by this? I mean sleeping in late, not getting up early, not staying late, or whatever it may be. Those things are so crucial for your wildlife photography. In wildlife photography, a lot of times it's so tempting to not want to get up before the sun, to not get there 30 minutes before sunrise, stuff like that. But well over 50% of the time, probably 75% of the time, my best shots come within the 30 minutes around sunrise. In wildlife photography, you're just gonna get such better lighting at sunrise. Most animals, not all animals, but most animals are 10 times more active during sunrise, and you're just gonna have so many more beautiful opportunities presented to you. Lighting isn't harsh, you're gonna get better, beautiful colors in the sky, on the ground, more unique shots, as opposed to most shots that are out there that are standard stock photos that have been taken a billion times of, let's just say, maybe a red-winged blackbird or something like that. If you get that same type of shot, the same type of pose maybe, or the same type of angle as another photographer, but you get that at sunrise or sunset with that different lighting, it's gonna sell your shot over the other person. So it's very tempting to not want to put in all the effort that it takes to get a really good shot, but man, it is so worth it. I can't express to you guys just how worth it is when you finally get those shots that you were wanting. Another thing that I mean in regards to subpar effort can also be just the way you move your body. A lot of times, if you're not gonna be putting in the effort and you're not gonna be getting maybe into prone or at least crouching or things like that, a lot of times you're not gonna get as great of shots as if you're just standing, walking around, you know, and kind of putting in that subpar effort. Or another thing could be, sometimes you need patience, right? In wildlife photography, you have to sit around, you gotta wait, and gotta really get into those positions to be able to get those amazing shots. And if you put in the subpar effort there and you're not really doing it to the fullness of what you should be doing, a lot of times you're not going to get as good of shots as if you really were to put in that effort and make everything worth it. So the last thing I want to talk about today is over editing your photos. This is by far the biggest beginner mistake that I made in my wildlife photography when starting out. And what I mean by over editing is more specifically in regards to the saturation and color. Like when I first saw scarlet macaws in real life, it was a gorgeous sight, but when I wanted to go and edit them, I just wanted to crank up that saturation bar all the way and just make everything as bright and beautiful as possible. But what you gotta realize is that a lot of times those colors wind up looking fake if you overdo it. You have to find a really good balance of when does this look beautiful and accentuate the colors, and when does this start to look like a pastel, you know, watercolor painting or something like that. And so in over editing, it's really important to, as a beginner wildlife photographer, adjust your editing in slow increments. It's better to adjust things slowly and find eventually over time what you like than way overdoing things and then realizing you don't like them. A lot of my photos I took near the beginning of my photography experience, a lot of times I had to go back and re-edit photos just because they were so bad, so oversaturated or things like that. Another thing could be bringing up either maybe too much sharpness or clarity in it, or maybe doing too much dehaze, stuff like that. Or another big thing was seeing banding in skies, because when I first shot wildlife photography, and this is just kind of speaking on the aspect of RAW versus JPEG, when I first shot in photography, I was mostly shooting in JPEG for the first 6 months of me doing photography, and I didn't realize how big of a jump it was from JPEG to RAW. And when you edit photos in JPEG and you try to bring down those highlights or bring up those shadows a lot, you get lots of banding across the sky and stuff like that. It just looks really bad. So I really encourage you guys just to notice those small things, because as you grow and as you advance and develop in your wildlife photography skills and your editing skills specifically, you're gonna notice a lot of things and realize kind of a lot of the places where you went wrong. So over editing, definitely keep that in mind. Definitely figure out your edits slowly. Really push yourself to understand what it is that you're editing rather than just trying to do quick edits and crank them out. So some exciting news for you guys. With you guys all requesting for me to do some travel videos, I got a sweet lineup set up out of Yosemite. I finally made it over to Yosemite and I got some sweet stuff coming up and I'm so excited to share with you guys. So stay tuned. In a week from now, you guys will be seeing a lot of really cool stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe below if you haven't already. I hope this helps you guys out and helps you figure out your wildlife photography and how you can avoid some of these mistakes or how maybe you can improve some of these things. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.